side. Murphy shooting, save a rebound on the view.
Now what? Hey everyone, this is Casey. You're watching the Red Rubber Duckwind All Sports Network. And if you haven't showed up to the stream on Sunday, or what am I saying Sunday for? It happened on Monday.
Dumbasses. Dumbass. 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 Dumbasses. Dumbass. 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 Dumbass.
Anyways, if you haven't tuned into the stream, you would know that the Steelers season came to an end to the Buffalo Bills. 31-17 the final score. And so Buffalo moves on to Kansas City, while the Steelers are they're going to be sitting in the good living room on the couch watching football for 3 weeks. Meanwhile, the front office is deciding what to do. But of course, we got to talk about how this season came into fruition. 10-7, the 7th seed in the AFC. We needed help to get into the playoffs. We got that help. And of course, now the question is, where'd we go? The sky's the limit, right? Not necessarily. But let's go ahead and talk about what happened during the 2023 season. To start out, we went up against the San Francisco 49ers at home. And if you saw, I was in this very room and I was throwing chairs because we did not perform very well at all against the 49ers. There was one particular point where we only had 1 yard of total offense throughout until the final drive of this first half, which led to a Kenny Pickett touchdown. The 49ers, of course, then went on to become prime Super Bowl contenders. They're still the number 1 seed in the NFC. They're hosting Green Bay in the divisional round at the time of this recording. So, not really surprising when you see the team the 49ers have become with Brock Purdy and everything. Now the Steelers, they got their first loss out of the way. Now the question is, how did they respond? And in week 2, they hosted another home game against the Cleveland Browns, who went on to become the number 5 seed. And the Steelers did not deserve to win that game. If it wasn't for 2 defensive touchdowns, we would have been blown out of the water because the offense under Matt Canada, they have not performed. They have not found their footing other than a couple George Pickett long bombs then and there. But then again, that only happens as often as Haley's Comet. The defense showed up big time, especially with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith getting sacks, getting interception, recovering fumbles. The defense was the strong point. This was the 1993 Houston Oilers combined into one game where the offense can't find their footing and the defense actually showed up. But then again, the Steelers were then 1-1 and they had another primetime game because that was Monday Night Football. They went out to Vegas to play the Raiders on Sunday Night Football. And the Steelers actually showed up and they won that one by a score of 23-18. Of course, this was back when the Raiders had Josh McDaniels and they had a questionable call at the end when they decided to kick a field goal when a touchdown could have easily brought it back up to one could have easily tied the game if you got the 2-point conversion. That play call to me didn't make sense. I'm like, you do realize that the offense kind of found their footing during that game, right? But then again, the Steelers escaped Josh McDaniels and company and the Raiders. They went to 2-1, and then they traveled to down to Houston week 4, and they got shellacked. Like, the offense was producing turnovers so often that NRG Stadium became the world's biggest cookie factory. And this was when we saw a beautiful sight of CJ Stroud. And currently, the Texans are traveling down to Baltimore for the divisional round. And yeah, the Steelers did not play very well at all. CJ Stroud picked apart the defense, and the offense couldn't do anything of note. All they did was produce turnovers, like I mentioned earlier. So that was another ugly loss for the Steelers under their belt. 2-2. They're looking to beat, and they were looking to beat a rival in the Baltimore Ravens before the bye week. And with that, they did. But the offense, both offenses could not hit their targets where the damn. Because the Ravens were dropping balls left and right. Them and the Chiefs receivers were dropping balls a lot. And Mark Andrews, who got injured later on in the season, he was even dropping passes. And the Steelers proved that bullshit reigns supreme. The the defense actually got a safety off a blocked punt. And then the offense and then the defense had very crucial interceptions, especially after a muffed punt. They intercepted the ball in the end zone. And then Kenny Pickett to George Pickens with the walk-off touchdown. I mean, the go-ahead touchdown wasn't exactly walk-off, but you get the idea. The Steelers move on to win 17-10. They go to 3-2. They're in a good spot heading into the bye week, and they're going up against a very good offense on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. And we saw a name that's very familiar now in the NFL, rookie Puka Nacua. He had a lot of catches. There was one time where Puka Nacua was outgaining the whole entire Steelers offense, but they held their ground. They got the stop. Defense got the stops when they needed it, and the run game was starting to find their footing with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. They, especially Harris, he had a rocky start to the year, but him and Warren lit up SoFi Stadium, and that was enough for the Steelers to win 24-17. And so week 8, Jacksonville, do you remember this? Of course you won that game 20-10. And you definitely outplayed the Steelers on that one cuz the Steelers were making mistakes left and right. Of course you had plenty of interceptions from Kenny Pickett, but you decided to mess with the terrible towel at the end of the game. And I'm like, that's not going to be good for you later. And I was right. Because since then, in an appalling irony, in week 18, the Steelers won their game. We'll get to that in a bit. But Jacksonville, they ended up losing. I think it was 5 of their last 6. They were 8-3 at one point, the number 1 seed in the AFC. And then a total collapse from the Jaguars. Yeah, Robert Cope doesn't forget that shit. He can forgive, but he can never forget. But enough talking about that. Let's go to Thursday Night Football Week 9 against the Tennessee Titans. It was a very fun stream with me and Billy, and Illogical joined me as well. And unfortunately for Billy, they had a chance to pull off the upset, but a Quan Alexander interception ended it. And It was very difficult because the Matt Canada offense, yeah, they got the job done, but they were it was at the point where they were doing just enough to win, but not exactly playing like the Steelers of old, where they never played down to competition. They just went out there, played a good brand of football, and actually produced on a high level. No, the Steelers don't do that anymore with Matt Canada or without. But the Steelers defense also got turnovers when they needed to. It was 2016, a win for the Steelers, and that put the Steelers up to a 5-3 record somehow, some way. And then week 10, we faced off against Grassi Posse, Green Bay Packers, and it was actually a pretty close game, like Steelers and Packers. It's a classic interconference rivalry. Classic. It was a classic AFC NFC rivalry. You always get excited when these two story franchises go against each other. And of course, we faced off against Jordan Love, who actually had himself a pretty decent game. This was back when the Packers, they didn't know where they were. They were constantly they went down, they went on a slump. They were nowhere near the playoffs, and then they did proceed to go on a huge comeback throughout the season. The loss, the those two interceptions from Jordan Love, it may have cost him the game, did not cost him the season though, with that huge comeback that they did. And look at them now. The Packers are now, they were the seventh seed in the NFC, which should not have existed. But if they didn't exist, we wouldn't have some Dallas Cowboys slander. So the Green Bay Packers would be facing San Francisco in the divisional round, and this course the Steelers are going to be looking back on that and be like, "What could have been us?" And in Week 11, our final game against the Cleveland Browns, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible because what you kind of I'm talking about the offenses, the defenses were there. The Browns and the Steelers, they both have excellent defenses. You have Myles Garrett on one end, TJ Watt on the other. It was going to be a close game no matter what. The Browns always give us a very hard time up at Cleveland Browns Stadium. And Dustin Hopkins, who back then was not injured, he ended up kicking the game winner. And the offense couldn't do much. And for everyone that was, for the Steelers front office, that was the very last straw. They told Matt Canada to get out of there. You're washed. It's over. You're done. And everyone, 2 days before Thanksgiving, popped the champagne. They got the turkey out early because it was time to party. Because we've been wanting Matt Canada fired for months, especially even before the season started. When Matt Canada was told to stay, you could hear a lot of no's coming out of phone boxes because they were in a glass case of emotion. The Steelers actually fired a coach for the first time in the middle of the season since 1941. That was a long time ago. Over 70 years ever since the Steelers were like, you know what? We got to save our season. Let's cut bait. Matt Canada was actually gone. In the first game without Matt Canada, it looked like that was actually the right decision because Kenny Pickett aired it out. We were outgaining opponents for the first time this season. Keep in mind, week 12, rolling in, we did not outgain a single opponent during the whole damn season. And we went into Cincinnati and we took care of business. We only scored 16 points, but it was enough for them to win. Of course, we could have had a lot more, but the offense woke up. The defense was strong as usual. And the Steelers were in prime position to actually do something in the playoffs. And then came weeks 13, 14, and 15. Going in, we were 7-4. And going into Arizona, I'm like, this is a very easy opponent we should beat. This is going to be a game where the Steelers play down the competition and they raise hell. I was right. Because Arizona outplayed everybody. We couldn't cover Trey McBride. The Steelers, they went for it on 4th and goal, did not get it. And that in that one particular drive, we ended up losing Kenny Pickett to an ankle injury. So we had to deal with the titty kisser, Mitch Trubisky, and you know what happened from there. Of course, Mitchell Trubisky could not guide the offense like Kenny Pickett did. And we ended up losing to the frickin' Arizona Cardinals. Was I shocked? No. Was I disappointed? Hell yeah. And that game was rather interesting because there was a huge weather delay because there was a major storm going over the area. There was a huge weather and lightning delay by 30 minutes, I think it was. It even got to the point where I had to stop my charity stream before we even got back into playing. And at that point, I was like, you know what? These streams are usually around 3.5 hours. Once I get to that point, I've seen enough of this team. They're going to focus on New England. Let's hit end stream. I would never do that under any circumstances, but the Steelers were actually playing up to their standard, yeah, I would stick around and stream an extra hour or two. But at that point, I had grown tired of all the playing down the competition. I've had enough of seeing them struggling. It was like watching. It was like watching a. It's like watching a baby dinosaur trying to catch flies and failing very badly. You know, eventually they'll learn, but the dinosaur, they do actually learn. The Steelers, they couldn't do anything. And that was true during week 14, Thursday night football against the hated New England Patriots. Now, this was before Mac Jones got hurt. And this would be an easy game for the Steelers, right? They don't have Tom Brady anymore. We should actually beat them handily. Oh boy, were we wrong. We proceeded to struggle against Bailey Zappi. We couldn't stop Ezekiel Elliott worth a damn. And the Steelers, they did make it close, but it was already a blowout in sheep's clothing. Because that was not a very close game at all. And especially with a questionable 4th down play call. You know, me and Illogical, we streamed the game. I ended up losing my shit for good reason. Because we did not perform well at all. This was the Arizona game without the lightning delay. That is how bad this team performed. And of course, these two ended up being bottom feeders, like we mentioned. If it wasn't for the Tom Grassi raid, that stream would not have been worth it. It would not have been worth it. Huge shout out to Tom Grassi, and congrats on 600K, by the way. And thank you so much for the raid. And I look forward to joining you and the Grassi posse in future raids. And in week 15, We went to Indianapolis to face the Colts, and we got absolutely shellacked. We couldn't do anything worth a damn, which is what happens when you put Mitch Trubisky out there. We saw what happened in Chicago before they had their fluke playoff run, and they ended up collapsing because the Steelers didn't do much during that game at all. I'm like Gardner Minshew had his way with the defense, and Michael Pittman Jr. was going off. The Steelers weren't ready to play at all. From 7-4 to the number 5 seed to 7-7 on the outside looking in. It was at the point where I was like, you know what? We're done. I'll gladly do the last 3 games, but this team is done. They're cooked. And then there was a point where every Steelers fan is saying, fire Tomlin, go Bengals, go Seahawks, and go Ravens. We were sick. We did not want Mike Tomlin to get another winning season at all. We wanted this to be over. But then jingle bells were heard in the distance, and the long-awaited return of Mason Rudolph, the red zone reindeer. The Steelers offense actually showed up, which we hardly saw throughout the whole season. Week 16 was the first time where I could say, wow, our offense actually looks pretty good. And they were, especially against Cincinnati. George Pickens with 2 long touchdowns. This whole entire game, this at the expense of Red 5478's liver, was really, really good for the Steelers. 2 days before Christmas, they got a Christmas miracle in the hands of Rudolph the Red Zone Reindeer, and the defense showed up. They made Jake Browning's time a living hell once again, and for the first time in forever, we actually looked at the squad and said, wow, they actually look good. And in week 17, we went to Seattle for New Year's Eve to take on the Seattle Seahawks. And that was a fantastic game between 2 teams fighting for the playoffs in their own right. And the Steelers, they did enough. They scored 30 points again. The Steelers defense, they contained Geno Smith just enough. And the Steelers get a win on New Year's Eve. And the Rams made the playoffs because of us. So, guys like Black Flags Matter and Cole Carson, you're welcome. And then came week 18. The scenarios were there. We needed to win, obviously. We needed either Buffalo or Jacksonville to lose, or a tie between Houston and Indy, which was win or go home for them. If we lost, it got to the point where that wasn't that big of a deal. There was still a scenario with Jacksonville losing. We needed Denver to win, which they didn't. And we needed a winner between Houston and Indy, just in case we lost that game. And of course, the Ravens at the time, they already clinched the number 1 seed in the AFC against Miami back in week 17. So we knew at that point that they were going to be resting their starters, and the Steelers did just enough against the Ravens backups. And of course, if it wasn't for the monsoon, I think the Steelers would have ran over the Baltimore Ravens more than they did. Because the Steelers, they won 17-10. If it wasn't for like 2 fumbles, then the Steelers would have had their way. This team would look very comfortable. I'm like, if we do end up making the playoffs somehow, some way, you know what? We actually have a shot. And lo and behold, we actually got that shot when Tennessee beat Jacksonville. And the Steelers were in the playoffs once again with a 10-7 record. And because Buffalo beat Miami in the AFC East Championship, we would be going to Buffalo. And then the snow hit. The governor called for the game to be delayed until Monday. And so we couldn't get that snow game that a lot of NFL fans were wanting. But then again we're in a different time where people are actually starting to give a little bit more care about everyone's safety. Like where was that? Where was that about 50 years ago? But lo and behold, we had two Monday night games. The first one was between the Steelers and Bills. And unfortunately, our season came to an end right there because Josh Allen was running over us and they were throwing to Kincaid. The the offense also had two crucial turnovers, especially with George Pickens fumbling, and that should have been a fumble with Pat Fryermuth. Like, you don't need to help the Bills. The Bills can help themselves. And you don't need to help the Steelers lose because the Steelers can help themselves lose. And of course, you had that interception in the red zone by Rudolph, the why you call it the red zone reindeer. So the Steelers, they had a roller coaster of a season. Roller coasters are great for amusement parks, not football. And now Mike Tomlin is now in the final year of his contract. So we don't know what's going to happen during the 2024 season. We're going to have a huge schedule coming up because you got the Chiefs in there. You got the Cowboys in there. Those are two very good regular season teams normally. And who knows? Who even knows? Because, of course, we're in the AFC North, who actually, for the first time in, say, about 80 years, I think, they ended up having all four teams with a winning record. Because the Bengals ended up finishing 9-8. They still missed the playoffs, but it was they had a pretty tremendous comeback to end the year, despite bad performances along the way, especially against the Steelers. But then again, we don't know how the season comes into fruition until the playoffs for this year end. You get the NFL draft coming up in April, and then you have to deal with free agency. So, where do I see the Steelers in 2024? I still think they finish around the same record, but hopefully Mike Tomlin can wake up and we actually don't play down to competition and actually play like every game is the Super Bowl. Because the Steelers are not known for that. They're not known for that at all. They're known for playing down to competition, days of our Steelers, yada, yada, yada. So hopefully the 2024 season will be brighter with Mason Rudolph at the helm or Kenny Pickett. Please no Mitchell Trubisky. I would want him traded real soon, or at the very least cut. But Mason Rudolph has shown that he's worked very well with this organization. He has the capability to do something beautiful with this team. And now the Steelers look to the NFL draft. If I remember correctly, I think they got the 18th pick or the 20th pick. So, however we use it, I'm hoping the Steelers get more help for whoever's at the helm, for whether it's Pickett or Rudolph. I want them to get more offensive line. We already got Broderick Jones. That's a good start. We need more because Dan Moore has given up a lot of sacks this season, and we just need more protection for our quarterbacks. And of course, as for the defense, they're going to be focusing on more linebackers. Nick Herbig had himself a really, really good year. And who knows? The sky's the limit for that defense. If we get some more corners to help in safeties to help out Minka Fitzpatrick, that would be very nice. Because Joey Porter Jr. actually did pretty decent, and Patrick Peterson, he was getting burned with each passing week. I hope that the Steelers focus on their cornerbacks and safeties, focus on the O-line. You already got great wide receivers with Deontay Johnson finding his hands, and George Pickens showing he has the capability of doing something beautiful. And I really hope that the Steelers realize that the sky's the limit. If they can stop playing down the competition, you got yourself a very, very dangerous team. That's going to do it from me. Of course, I'm still going to do the charity drive for next season. I'm going to pick out 17 other charities to do. And if we do make the playoffs, I'm going to find charities for those teams as well. So for 2024, I'm already trying to lay out a roadmap because we got our opponents. So for the 2024 season, we're going up against the AFC North. Of course, we play them. That's 6 games down, 11 to go. In the AFC East, we'll be hosting the Jets. In the AFC South, we're going to be traveling to Indianapolis again. And then we host Kansas City and LA, the Chargers. And then we have Denver. We got Denver, and then we travel to Vegas again. And we face off against the NFC East next year. We host Dallas and the Giants. And of course, we got Philly and Washington road trips. And then our another interleague conference opponent is the NFC South. And that year that was determined to be a road trip to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. So, do I see the Steelers going on another winning spree? Absolutely. Even with the tough opponents on our roster, of course, on the schedule, of course, you got the AFC North, you got Dallas, you got Kansas City, you got Indy, and of course, you got Philadelphia looking for revenge. It's going to be a tougher schedule than in years past. But can the Steelers absolutely find the bullshit and actually win? Of course I do. Sky's the limit, as I mentioned. That's going to do it for the 2023 Steelers season review. We look forward to next year. As for me, I'm going to try to find something to do within that time period because, of course, you got March Madness coming up. I'm doing a charity drive for that. And I'm thinking about doing a few United Football League streams as well. And then, of course, we're an all sports network. I'm going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins here shortly. Might do some streams for them. Yeah, it's going to be future's bright on this channel. I'm looking forward to it. But that's going to do it for me. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It does take me ages to get videos out, especially with my final spring semester of college starting up right now as we speak. It's going to be difficult for me to get content out, especially with the major I chose. So, I'm going to try to keep up with you guys, keep up with the sports world, and we'll see how it goes. But thank you guys for watching, and until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.